Welcome to Formed, where each week we navigate a relevant topic or question through honest conversations. We are three pastors with three different backgrounds on staff together at Irving Bible Church in Irving, Texas. We believe we are constantly being formed in the way of Jesus for the sake of the world, and we hope this podcast helps with that. So let's jump into this week's episode of Formed. Welcome back to another week of Formed. Guys, it's Mother's Day coming up, and we're going to talk about mothers in the Bible and everything around mothers. But you might be wondering, if you're watching on YouTube or you're listening in your car, you're like, hey, I thought Barry was on sabbatical.
Wait a minute.
But he's
Surprise,
here.
surprise. Here
Barry,
I
how
am.
are you here?
I'm really loving my sabbatical right now. Yeah, we're recording this a little bit in advance of sabbatical, so there'll be some episodes that'll come out while I'm gone, and I really am gone by the time you're listening to this. I'm not coming back in. As much as I love my friends here, I am not going to be coming back in to hang out with y'all while I'm on sabbatical, but we thought we'd knock out a few of these so that there'd be some episodes coming out while I'm on sabbatical. I think by the time this one airs, I will have just wrapped up a week at a monastery with some Benedictine monks in New Mexico, and really excited about that. And then I'm sure when I come back officially from sabbatical, we'll probably talk about it on the podcast. So, yeah.
So, since Barry's here, if you want to call him or text him with any question about the church or any suggestion for the church, you can do that right now.
Don't do that, because one of us is going to be getting his
S.
emails.
Matthew
Yeah,
with
that's right.
one T.
It was funny about that. My wife heard from somebody about this trip of yours in New Mexico, but I guess she heard the details wrong, because the other night she said, "Did you know Barry's going to go spend 6 weeks with monks?" And I'm like, I don't think he's spending like half his
Not
sabbatical.
quite that
but
long. Not that. Yeah.
could be wrong. But anyway,
weeks.
so today we're going to talk about mothers in the Bible. Mother's Day is coming up. And so let's just start here. Who's an underrated mother in the Bible that you think
question.
doesn't get enough attention?
So we joked a little bit about this. We haven't shared our answers with each other to see who's going to have the best answer. And I think we both feel a little confident about
I don't know,
We'll
confident,
see.
but
Confident? No.
competitive.
Okay, so when I thought about this question, I think I would say Hannah, Samuel's mother,
nice.
is someone that we don't always hear about, think about. So Hannah is married to Elkanah, and he has two wives, one of which is Hannah. His other wife has children. Hannah doesn't have any children. And in this culture, at this time, for a woman to not have children is incredibly disgraceful, shameful. Oftentimes it was thought that the woman had sinned, and that's why the Lord hadn't given her children. And this is a primary role for a woman in this culture. And so Hannah doesn't have children. And she's praying fervently that God would grant her children. And she's weeping bitterly. Scripture says that she was in deep anguish. One day she's in the temple, she's praying, and she asks God, "Please, God, give me a child. And if you do, I will dedicate that child back to you. I'll dedicate that child to your service." And then God does open her womb. She gives birth to a son, and she names him Samuel, which means God, heard by God. God heard her prayer, gives her this child. And when he's old enough, so it says after she had weaned him, she brings him to the temple, presents him to Eli the priest, and dedicates him to the service to the Lord. And Samuel ends up becoming one of the greatest prophets of Israel. He's the prophet that anoints the first king of Israel. He's the prophet that anoints the greatest king of Israel. He's a powerful leader. And what's so remarkable to me about Hannah is just her faith in God, that one, she's so has this intimate relationship with God where she pours her heart out to God. I think it says that it was even wordless prayer. Like, she's just in the deepest parts of her heart. She's pouring her heart out to God. God hears her prayer. And then here's this child that she's longed for, that she's prayed for. She's so much desired to be a mother. And her faithful obedience to God, that she would bring him to the temple and say, "God, I love this child, and yet I want to be obedient to you, and I love you, and I'm going to give this child to you, knowing that you're the one that I need, that you're my treasure and my reward and my portion. And so this child is yours for your service." And how Hannah's obedience impacted the nation of Israel through Samuel.
Yeah,
so
good. Yeah, I really like your answer. So I think you win the competition. Although I do think the woman that I thought of is somewhat underrated. she doesn't get as much development in the account of her story, perhaps as Hannah does, and yet I think we see some things that are pretty remarkable about her, and that's actually Hagar.
I knew it.
You saw it coming, huh? So
She's good,
yeah,
yeah.
she doesn't get necessarily a lot of attention, but here's a model of a woman who is dealt some really unjust circumstances. And it's interesting, even as I think about the question about underrated mothers in the Bible or famous mothers in the Bible, like sometimes the women that we sort of immediately go to, you have to recognize that, and the same is true with regard to the men that we'll talk about in another episode, like that as much as they sometimes are models of faith, they're also frail and fallen, just like the rest of us, right? And so you get the story of Abraham and Sarah, who are in some ways models of faith, but also models of failure. And the story of Hagar is a situation where she finds herself dealing with some really unjust circumstances as she bears Abraham a son, Ishmael, but then is rejected and cast out. And yet she perseveres through these unjust circumstances with a kind of tenacious faith in God that I think can be inspirational for us. And there's just this beautiful little scene where she has an encounter with God and she calls him, she refers to him as, "You are the one who sees me." And then she says, "I have now seen the one who sees me." And I just think there's something really powerful about that little scene, that here's a woman who is dealing with some painful, unjust circumstances, but she is seen by God, and she recognizes herself as having been seen by God, having been valued by God, having been cared for and delivered by God. And so that was the one that came to my mind.
She's a good one.
Underrated.
Yeah.
Why did you think, you're like, I knew he was going to go there?
Well, when he started setting it up, because I thought of Hagar as well,
Yeah.
and I thought Hagar, like her story, is so it's not often heard about. You think about Sarah, but you don't think about Hagar. And what I love about her as well is she's an outsider, right? So she's a woman of color, a foreigner to the Israelite community, and how God sees her and says, "I've got a place for you." And so I love her story as well.
I went with Moses' mother because I was like, anybody who
she's
can,
good.
I'm a big planner, and anybody who can plan out something and it worked to that degree,
Yep.
I just have so much respect for her. And I mean, there's a lot of faith that played into that of her, Moses River, all of that. But for her to be the one that is, going to take care of him too, I was like,
Well, and what a risk
Yeah.
that she takes to make sure Moses is, lives.
yeah. Okay, so question: who is one mother? And obviously, this has to be different than the first one. Who's one mother that everyone should know their story? You can't say all of them either.
No, I mean, I immediately went to, I have a few that I jotted down, but immediately went to kind of both Naomi and Ruth in the book of Ruth, right? Naomi, here is a woman who actually is an immigrant. We're told in the story that she leaves her homeland to travel to Moab, really to provide a life for her children, for her sons in the midst of this famine. She leaves there. She loses her husband. Her sons die, but they have married and now have left her with these two daughters-in-law. And you have this sort of tender interaction. She's on the road back to Bethlehem, and she really is clinging to very little hope at that point in the story. She finds herself feeling as though she's been dealt a bitter hand, that the hand of the Lord is against me. She sends her daughters-in-law back because she says, it'll be better for you if you aren't with me. But then there's this moment of she and Ruth saying, where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. It's just this beautiful scene of a mother and a daughter-in-law. Really powerful. And of course, as the story plays out, Ruth finds Boaz, the kinsman redeemer. Naomi instructs her to go to him, and the whole thing comes together. You see the hand of God on display, his loyal love, his hesed faithfulness. And so by the end of the story, Boaz and Ruth are together, and Ruth now becomes a mother. And it's not it's not depicted necessarily at the end of the story, but this story that's filled with so much heartache, so much tragedy, and yet at the end of the story, there's a baby born, and little Obed that is the reminder of God's loyal love in the midst of a story marked by pain. And I always imagine the sort of the closing scene of the book of Ruth with gray-haired Naomi holding baby Obed in her arms, rocking in a rocking chair, even though I don't think they actually had rocking chairs back then, right?
Well,
But
maybe.
she's holding this baby in her arms, and with a big smile on her face and a tear streaming down her cheek, right? Because there will always be 3 graves in Moab: her husband, her sons. Like, there's an ache that she will carry with her through the rest of her life, and yet God has demonstrated his loyal love even through the heartache. And she's reminded of that. She looks down in the face of this little one, baby Obed, who then Ruth becomes the great-grandmother of the great King David. And so the lineage of faith from the character of both Boaz and the character of Ruth that is put on display in that book that then is passed down to become part of the heritage of King David.
It's one of my favorite relationships,
Yeah.
Naomi and
Yeah.
Ruth.
Yeah.
Orpah's like deuces them out.
Yeah.
And, just
Yeah.
like her relationship with Boaz and how Naomi was there to kind of like give guidance and
Well, and then ultimately comes Jesus,
Yeah,
right?
right,
The Savior of the world is
Yeah.
born through the faithfulness
Yep.
of Naomi and Ruth
Yep.
to one another and to God, and to
Ruth-
God.
Yeah, Ruth makes the genealogy of Jesus.
Yeah, it's beautiful. The one that I thought about, the one that I would want people to know about, is someone I think we kind of touched on a little bit before when we talked about the underrated mother of the Bible, but it's Sarah. And because I just think it's such a phenomenal story that literally only God could do this. God comes to Abraham at the age of 100, tells him, you're going to have a son by Sarah. And he falls on his face and he laughs because he's like, I'm 100, she's 90. How is this going to be possible? It's not humanly possible. It's not biologically possible. She's way past the age of bearing children. How is this going to be possible? And then in a later scene, Sarah hears about it and she laughs. And what I love about that is kind of what you alluded to earlier, Barry, that this is what's so beautiful about Scripture, that it presents real people, that they didn't have this perfect faith, and yet the writer of Hebrews says this about Sarah, and by faith, even Sarah, who was past childbearing age, was enabled to bear children because she considered him faithful who had made the promise. And so it's very clear that she didn't have perfect faith. She laughed, she doubted, and yet there's something deep down inside of her that the writer says that she believed God. And it's such an example to me of there are these moments where I know in the past God has done things that I could not have asked or imagined, and he will do again. And all he's really asking of me is to trust him and to believe him. And I think that's what Sarah's, before she even gives birth to Isaac, God renames her and calls her the mother of nations. And then that's what ultimately happens to her. And somewhere deep down inside, she had enough faith to believe that, I think.
she had the best taste in baby names.
Isaac, she did.
Just want to throw that out there. And
That's good, yeah.
I have one more that I want to throw out, I think, as an important part of this discussion, and that's Deborah. Interestingly,
Yes.
because we're not actually told
She's
of her biological children,
Right.
if she has any, but she's referred to in Judges 5:7 as the mother of Israel.
Love that, yeah.
And of course, she is a leader of God's people. She is the leader of the nation. And so here's a woman who is investing herself, investing her life in the lives of others in a way that the metaphor of mother is used to describe her giving of herself for the sake of other people. And I just think that's something really beautiful and powerful, especially around Mother's Day, of just recognizing that there certainly may be women who never have biological children of their own and yet can be mothers of faith, spiritual
love
mothers in the lives of other people as they invest themselves, as they give of themselves, as they lead in the church. leading God's people. Looking back at Deborah, I think as a great model
Yeah.
in that regard.
Yeah, I thought about that even as particularly for mothers. I'm sure this applies to fathers as well, but I think for me, the number of women who have served as spiritual mothers for me. I mean, even in this church right now, I have a handful of women who just mother me. They love me. They care for me. They pray for me. They speak words of truth and life into me. And while I'm not their biological daughter, in all these ways that are so vitally important, they give of themselves. I think of Barry's mom, who we affectionately call Granzy. Like, she's one of those women for me, who every time I preach will come up to me and grab me by the shoulders and just speak words of life into me. And there's quite a few women that do that for me. And what a blessing that is to me, and how I long to do that for other younger women as well. So I think that's good.
That's good. Let's have a conversation about Mary, Mother of Jesus. I kind of just wanted that we could take it any direction that we wanted to, and even we were recording this post Easter, and just looking at the journey of Jesus to the cross and everything is just another reminder of what Mary had to, she has Jesus knowing that, that Jesus, her son's going to die.
Yeah.
And I've just thought about that a lot, of just that feeling that Mary, she's obviously super proud. And it's like, you have that calling to be the mother of Jesus, but also knowing that your son's going to have a brutal death and knowing that he's going to die. And I don't know. I've just thought about that a lot over the week of Easter. But let's just, where do we want to go with? I mean, it could be things we can take away from Mary. It can be different little snippets or whatever. Let's talk Mary.
I think one of the things I think about when it comes to Mary is how God chooses a poor teenage peasant girl. He doesn't choose the educated, the wealthy, like the best standing in society. He chooses a poor teenage peasant girl to bear his son, the Savior of the world. And what God says, what that says about how God thinks about people. And then thinking about, she's a teenager, she's betrothed to Joseph, how much damage this does to her reputation. She has no idea what's going to happen. The angel comes to her and it says that she was troubled. And she's young, she's frightened, I'm sure she's overwhelmed. But then her response is always what really stands out to me. So she says, "Behold, I am the servant of the Lord. Let it be to me according to your word." And I think she's such a picture of surrender, not just in that moment, but throughout her life, how she had to surrender to say, I don't know how this is going to turn out. I don't know what's going to happen, but I know I'm going to be okay because, God, you're with me and you love me. And she did that in that moment when she finds out that she's conceived of the Holy Spirit. And yet, how many times, to your point, Isaac, she's told from the very beginning, a sword will pierce your own heart.
Yes.
And how many times as Jesus is growing up, she must have had those words in her mind and seeing what he goes through. She's at the cross when her boy is being crucified, right? In the most shameful way possible. And it's just such a picture of surrender to me.
Yeah. I mean, I think about her response of faith, right? This act of obedience and trust. Let it be unto me as you have spoken. And that is, I think, a paradigm for the way in which we are to live. That's why Mary, in Protestant circles, I think sometimes we worry about talking too much about Mary, precisely because of a concern that perhaps other Christian traditions have made too much of her. And we've actually missed the fact that she is like the paradigmatic example of a disciple of this posture of trust. Let it be unto me as you have spoken, right? Your will, your way, your time. And I think that's just a model for how we're all called to live. I thought about those words from Simeon, a sword will pierce your own soul as well. And Mary ponders these things. She holds on to them from Jesus' childhood, so that when she is in this unimaginable moment of watching her son suffer unjustly, she's able to hold on.
Yeah.
Remembering the words that have been spoken to her, remembering the visit of the angel and the promise that was made. And I have to imagine that in that moment she's completely confused as to what is happening. How is this what's now happening to him, to my boy? That I don't know that she could have been really prepared for this reality. Certainly there were things that Mary knew, right, from the Christmas of Mary. Did you know there were things about that she knew, but there were things that she didn't.
Yeah.
That she was discovering right there along with everyone else. And so I think in the anguish of these moments, she is completely confused as to what's happening. And yet I think she's continuing to say, but God, I know what I've experienced. I know what I've seen. I know what I've heard, and therefore will continue to trust. And she's, I think, an amazing paradigm of faith.
That's awesome. Let's talk about our own mothers for a little bit. How has our mothers impacted our faith? Who wants to go first?
Yeah, so my mom is definitely one of my heroes of faith. I think I hope one day to have as much faith as she has and to follow Jesus and love Jesus the way she does. And so for me, as I was growing up, my mom had gone through quite a number of hardships, 2-time cancer survivor, and just lots of situations where it was suffering. And I just never saw her waver in her faith. And it didn't mean like, I knew there were times where she was sad and she was scared and I'm sure even in despair. And yet she just had this way of trusting God that has just been such an example to me of, I want to be able to do that, even when I don't know. And again, it's a picture of surrender. I don't know what's going to happen. This doesn't make sense. And yet, God, I know you're with me and I know you love me. And it's been such a example to me of how she's done that. I think the second part of that is, it takes a lot of resilience. She's one of the most resilient people I know. It takes a lot of resilience to come to another country at a very young age, to leave behind your family. I mean, she left behind my dad and my older sister, who was 4 at the time, came here. And it was just another picture of just, I'm going to trust God. I don't know what this looks like, and yet I do think this is the next step for me, and I'm going to trust that you're with me in it. And then I think secondly, so my mom's an Enneagram 2. Just the way she serves people and the way she serves God. I mean, this is a woman who, at the age of 75, she was a nurse. She would go to India to do 3-week medical camps in the middle of really difficult places, places I didn't want to go to, or I was like, I don't think I can hack it. But my mom at 75 was still, hey, this is how God's gifted me, and I think I could use these gifts for his glory, and I want to serve people. And in so moments like that, I've seen her serve, but in just the everyday moments of how she considers the needs of others before herself, and that's something that I strive to do. I don't think I've gotten there, but want to be like her in those ways.
It's beautiful. Yeah, my mother has made an incredible impact on my faith, and the man I've become, the pastor I've become, the husband, father I hope I've become. That similarly, my mother has endured some really heartbreaking circumstances. She's a widow. She also lost her daughter, my sister, my only sibling, and to see her quiet faith, but tenacious faith, holding on to God through painful circumstances, has been remarkable. And also, my mom's an Enneagram 2.
Yeah.
And so I just know that from childhood, my whole life, what I've experienced from her has been an unconditional, self-giving, self-sacrificial love, right? And so I think experiencing that as a child is part of what helps me to know and to trust the unconditional, self-sacrificial love of Jesus, because I've seen it modeled for me in my mom. And so it gives me then a model of what I want to be. Like, I want to be someone who loves others in that unconditional kind of way. I want to be someone who really does give of myself in sacrificial, self-giving love to other people, because that's what I've seen modeled consistently for me my whole life.
Grancy.
Yes,
She's a
Grancy.
staple.
Grancy's awesome.
She's a staple there in
Yes.
the service. And my mom, man, I just took my mom to the airport a few days ago, and so I just those hugs, you know, saying at the airport, they're tough, and she's always spoke so much life over me and prayed for me, and knowing that, all right, I know that you are praying for me and you're in my corner, but her faith through and teaching me and instilling that. I actually have a small story real quick. So it was before I was about to go to college. I was going to go to college, up at Liberty in Virginia. I didn't have a car, and it was a 9-hour drive for me. So I needed a car to get to college, and I remember being so frustrated. And my mom just reminded me every day, "Hey, God, you feel like this is right. This is where you feel like God's telling you to go." I was like, "Yes, I do." Then you will have a car. Like, have faith in this. And I remember sitting in the kitchen in our house, and I remember looking at her and saying, "It's not like God's just going to drop down a car from the skies, Mom." And I was like getting mad at her. And I'm not. And this is one of the crazier stories for me in my life. It was sometime afterwards. I don't remember how long. But this lady from my church calls, and she's a nurse at the hospital in our small town. And she's like, "Hey, I got your number, got connected with you because there's another nurse here that's retiring, and she's actually going to move to Florida, but she feels like God is telling her to give her car to somebody that's going to college and that's going to college far away to go to the ministry." And I was like, what is going on? Like, it was like freaking me out.
Yeah.
He's not going to drop a car from heaven. Huh?
And it was the biggest joke in our house. But and it was just a few days later, we met her at her at the courthouse in our small town. My mom shows up with a bag of fruit and vegetables, give her.
Great.
And the lady, as the first time and only time I ever met this lady, she gave me a 2002 light blue little Saturn. And she's like, "I felt so strong. This is what God has been telling me to do." And she's like, "I'm about to move to Florida." And she even pulled out her checkbook, wrote the registration fees. She wouldn't let me do it.
Wow.
She got in her car. I'd never seen her again.
Yeah.
And I tried to connect with her a few times after that. And it was just I joke sometimes that's my angel here. What happened?
Yeah.
But it's just my mom and I, we still talk about that. And
That's
she's
fantastic.
"You always said you're in your kitchen, in the kitchen that day of
That's great.
what's God going to do." And she had the faith all along. She's like, "If God's going to call you there, you will get there.
He's going to provide.
We'll do this." And I drove that car for a handful of years to get me through college.
That's great.
Anyway, love them, Mom.
Love it.
Yeah,
That's
good.
cool.
I love it.
All right, let's have some banter talk. Let's talk about traveling. Speaking of road trips and driving places, if you had to have a vacation or if somebody asked you "Hey, in the United States, let's keep it in the country that we're in right now. If you had to have a vacation somewhere that's maybe less popular, you can't say a super popular vacation spot. What vacation spot, what state would you suggest they go to? Here we go.
Here we go.
Here we go. You think I'm going to say New Jersey?
Here's
which everyone
New
should go
Jersey.
to New Jersey. Everyone should. It's
Everybody's
beautiful,
lining up
garden
to go to New
state.
Jersey for spring break.
Newark, New Jersey is where it's at. That is not my answer. So here's just a place that I find myself going to quite often. I mean, I think I've been there 6 times
Galveston?
or so. It's not Galveston. I don't think I've ever been to Galveston. It's Scottsdale.
Pretty beach.
Scottsdale, Arizona. I really love Scottsdale. One, it's just a quick flight from Dallas, so that's always convenient because I don't feel like there's that many places that I could go to just pretty quick from here that I like. And so it's a quick flight. It's beautiful. We don't have mountains here, and so I really do love the mountains. And so getting out to Arizona, just the weather at the right time. You can't go in the summer because it's unbearably hot, but you go there in April and it's I think this is what heaven's like.
Wow.
I love the food. So for me, I need to have a concentrated area with really good restaurants wherever I go. That's something I really value.
So nowhere too far off the map for you.
No, I need good food. I just have to have it made for me. Yeah. So I really like Scottsdale for that. Lots of good restaurants. And it's just my happy place in a little bit. You've talked about places of what your happy place is. I really enjoy Scottsdale. And so I find myself going out there almost once a year
Wow.
now.
That's
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll have to add it to the list.
I know, I've
We've
never
not
been
actually
there.
hit Scottsdale, so
Yeah, I love it.
Interesting. So, just real quick on the New Jersey thing, this is the Mother's Day episode, but I did spend last Father's Day
You did.
in New Jersey because we got stuck coming home from New York, and so we were staying in Jersey and spent the day at that outlet mall in New Jersey. And based on my limited experience from New Jersey, I wouldn't really recommend it.
You did not hit the hot spots. I mean, that's not New Jersey. That's just Newark.
Outlet mall in Jersey.
Yeah, I can't say anything about Newark.
That's the way I spent my last Father's Day. So, so you mentioned Happy Place. You probably know where I'm going. New Mexico, and particularly Santa Fe, is just a favorite spot for us. So, I mean, there's a whole bunch of places that when you asked the question, I was like, well, I could say this, I could say that. But for us, it just continues to come back to Santa Fe. And I mean, our kids make fun of us because we like go to all the same places, we eat the same restaurants, we go to the same shops, we do the same thing.
I didn't know this was such a hot spot.
Oh, it is.
Yeah. I mean, like the successful years when you do both summer and winter, right? I mean, it's just it's a really special. But there's so much connection to memories that are there for us, but then also just the beauty of the place. Downtown Santa Fe is like you sort of feel like you've stepped back in time or into another kind of just sort of magical kind of place. Of course, you get out from town, you're in the mountains, the rugged mountains of New Mexico. The food is incredible. So wherever I travel, like it's funny, we talked about Granzy. Like Granzy will go someplace because she wants to go to that place, and then she'll not spend any money on food, and she'll eat crackers and peanut butter or whatever. Like I go to some place like I want to have the full-on food experience. That's a big part of the destination for me. And the food in New Mexico is unique to New Mexico. It's a convergence of different kind of cultures and flavors from Native American, Mexican, and so it's just amazing. And so, yeah, I love it. And again, when this episode is airing, I think I probably will have just returned, if not still there.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I feel like I need to go to Santa Fe now.
Yeah.
Just hit Santa Fe.
I have a whole email that has
Yeah.
all the hot spots to hit in Santa Fe. So,
I was gonna say Santa Barbara. That's probably too popular of a spot. I'll say Maine.
huh?
I think
Maine is good.
I think
Yeah.
Maine and the lighthouses and everything up there is just such a relaxing spot. I went at a fairly young age.
Yeah, that's on our haven't hit that state yet, for me at least.
Yeah, when I was smaller, that was like a big thing.
You'd go to Maine?
Well, no, they wanted to hit. My father wanted me to hit all 50 states. So I went to 38. So I still need 12 more. It's those top states that I haven't hit yet: the Montana, Idaho, and all of that. But I'll actually make a plug for Kentucky. I think a relaxing, chill trip for people is to hit the Bourbon Trail. And I mean, I grew up 20 minutes from it, so it's not that big of a deal. It's just like a little day trip, a little Saturday. Hey, let's go up to Maker's Mark, and it's just all the distilleries up there is so cool. It's so cool to tour. You can do a tour all through kind of central Kentucky, and
I'm like seeing if I can figure out how to plan this into my sabbatical as we're sitting here. So it sounds fun.
It's awesome.
Fun.
And it's so cool. But all right, there's another episode of Formed. We'll be back next week.